Okay. Why do I start off every video with okay? Oh my god, what a long day. Whew. Wow. You know, I've mentioned this before a few times, and yet it's really the most, out of 3,700 videos, it's the most important video that I can make. Why, anytime I go out shooting, outdoors, I'm always bringing a speedlight with me. I mean, I wished it would be like convenient to carry around like a 20-pound lithium pack and a studio strobe and a light stand, but that's not very practical, is it? It is if you're going to do a location shoot. Obviously, you pull it out of the back of your car and you set it up. The best camera and the best lens in the world is only going to make snapshots. It'll be really high megapixel, like, oh great, 51 megapixels of snapshots. Now, I posted some test shots recently. They're boring. They're not, you know, those images on Flickr are not my portfolio, by the way. Everybody keeps looking at them. Do product photography, corporate stuff, gigs. I got 2 next week. One of them is going to be long. I kind of dread that one. I'm not getting paid enough for it. Everything's about lighting. I mean, why don't people realize that without lighting, you know, like, oh great, look, here's you know, $9,000 sitting in front of me. Wow, that's really expensive. It's still going to take snapshots. 51 megapixels, still a snapshot. Lighting compression. Everything is about lighting. When you can expose for your ambient however you want, and then raise your subject illumination up, you give yourself a sensor saturation. You don't have to worry about shutter shake, really. It depends on the percentage of the ratio of your ambient to your fill flash or your subject illumination. You can call it subject illumination, you can call it fill flash. I don't care what you call it. People don't realize that. You do have a rolling shutter issue on a huge sensor. As I've told people before, like on this camera, for example, and this video is not about this camera, will spank you at 1/30th or 1/60th of a second. It's like, well, 1/60th of a second is 1/60th. No, it's not. That huge sensor, even though it's 1/60th of a second, is covering 1/60th of a second for each section of that sensor, like an electronic front curtain shutter or an electronic shutter. So it's still a significant longer duration. Even though it's still 1/60th of a second. 1/60th of a second is actually sensor exposure, not sensor exposure to shake, which is going to be translated into the shot. With fill flash illumination, you have total control over 99% of the time. You have total control, like if you don't have ND filters or if you need to shoot in a specific scenario backlit, total control over your lighting. You know, your subject can be completely blacked out, yet you're exposing for effect. You know, you have people that are sitting out analogously, like in a tree, waiting for a deer to pass by, you know, to shoot it with a bow and arrow. Let's say a deer hunter up in the tree. Now, these are like the landscape photographers. These are the people, and it's admirable. I mean, I've done it for years where, you know, you get up at the crack of dawn or you go out late in the evening and you look for that magical 30-minute window of lighting. You will soon realize, unless you are a landscape photographer where all the strobes and flashes in the world aren't going to do you a damn bit of good, as a professional photographer, that it's not wise nor economical nor intelligent to even think of working that way. Come on, baby, let's go shoot. You know, the sun's about to set. Let's catch that magic lighting. You could take the crappiest lighting in the world at like 2 p.m. on the beach, somewhere in the Bahamas or in Florida. Obviously, there's some things you can only capture at sunset, like certain glows in the sky of the clouds are being illuminated. We all understand that. But, you know, you don't see professionals working that way unless they absolutely demand that specific effect, like in the sky of the rising or setting sun, which is understandable and is certainly valid. But when you control the lighting, I mean, you have complete control over everything. People are so intimidated by their camera, they think like a speed light or a studio strobe is like another camera they need to figure out. And they just can't marry this damn camera with a damn speed light. You know, and you're making a huge mistake by doing that. You control the saturation, the subject separation. You give your shot depth. All the best cameras and lenses in the world is like, well, if you can't do it with 51 meg, and I'm going to be the first person to say, you know, like, hey, medium format, 51 megapixels, just as an example. I still say you can't do it. It's about lighting. Everything is about lighting. Everything is about lighting. I could shoot my ugly face with this video with these lights turned off just using this crappy overhead lighting. I mean, it'll go from a bad video to a really bad video. Don't you understand how important that is? That the camera and the lens isn't going to get you there. I judge things not by what people say, but why they don't say, but by what they don't say or what they don't concentrate on. And of all the comments and emails I get about cameras and lenses, which is valid, you know, questions, people want to save money, they want to get the best lens. I understand all that, but if you talk to any hardcore professional photographer at all, I mean, they lust after lighting. They talk about lighting, you know, beauty dishes, octaboxes, grids. By the way, professional photographers, except for a very, very, very limited spectrum of use, do not use continuous LED lighting. Roto lights. Professional photographers don't use continuous lighting. They do, but almost never. It is about, they do have their use. They do, but it's still about 90-95% useless. You know, guess how good a continuous light is outdoors when it's nice and, you know, if you have someone like standing slightly off frame 5 feet away with the intensity cranked to the max, you know, it's even then it's only slightly useful. Professionals don't use continuous lighting, you know. LED panels are really cool and they're really neat for macro photography, or if you want to do some portraiture indoors, and you know that it is useful for that, but it still means it's useless for 90% of photography. So that sort of lighting doesn't count. There is nothing on the world that comes even close to a xenon flash tube in your speed light or your studio strobe. Lighting is imperative. When you're able to, people all the time talk about dynamic range. It's like, well, great, you got a high dynamic range snapshot. Dynamic range, dynamic range, dynamic range. Or people talk about shadow noise. And, well, that is important. You know, nobody wants to clean that up in Lightroom and Photoshop. Everything is about lighting. Anytime you talk to a real professional working photographer, and I talk to more than a few, even like the 2-hour conversation I had a few days ago with Benjamin Canarac, you know, top 5 supermodel photographer in the world. I mean, the guy doesn't talk about cameras. He talks about lighting. His lighting. He does like talking about lenses some, about his favorites, Nikkor lenses, but, you know, he talks about his monoblock heads and his studio strobes, his lighting. Everything is about lighting. That is the the dividing line. It's like if you go out in the desert, people that live in the desert, they're all the time talking about water. If you're in the city, nobody talks about water. It's so important in the desert, people talk about water. It's like you've crossed into another realm of human reality when you start talking to professional photographers, and you should realize this. They aren't talking about cameras and lenses. They're talking about lighting, the formation of lighting, where the speculars fall, the diffuse, the midtones. When is the last time you heard anybody? Most people don't even know what the hell it is. You know what negative fill is? Here are, like, if you go to like these boards where these you know, these hobbyist photographers hang out, none of those, 99% of them don't even know what the hell negative fill is. It's like, what's negative fill? Well, go look it up, what negative fill is. If you watch any video by professional photographers, they're not talking about cameras and lenses. They're talking about lighting. Where to place it, how to mod it, and right underneath lighting is lighting control. You know, you could drop a lot of light on someone's face. You could like stick a strobe here and a strobe here and like illuminate someone perfectly. It's like, wow. Now you have a well-saturated, perfectly exposed shot that doesn't have any character to it. It's kind of like, you know, Campbell's soup. It's like every can, it's just like having a can of Campbell's soup.
You know, ever open up a can of Campbell soup and you plop it out and it just plops out exactly like the size and shape of the can that it was in? Everything is about dynamic range compression. Your lighting is of paramount importance. I can't even express it enough. There is a dividing line that exists between professional photography and hobbyist and amateur photography. Everybody's concerned with camera and lens and stalking out the right shot. To capture that specific sort of lighting, like in early morning, late evening, obviously that really can't be duplicated. Most people are not landscape photographers, and I certainly am not. If you can't control the dynamic range compression of your shot between the ambient and the subject illumination, you really are barking up a tree and you're slave to the lighting that does exist. The best camera, the best lens in the world money can buy is absolutely secondary to lighting and lighting control, and even that is secondary to your mind. If you don't start seeing stuff with your mind instead of your eyeballs, that's an issue. It's like, well, that's a boring shot. You have to think like, well, no, if I expose from my ambient, make everything really dark. You know, there's a lot of ways to isolate your subject. You're like, well, I'm never going to shoot everything at f1.4. Well, that's excellent. I get my subject isolation. Here's another idea of subject isolation. How about, you know, you expose for your ambient, darken everything out. Not to the point, you know, it's whatever you need to express yourself. You want to see what's in the background, but you know, don't really want it to be emphasized so that your subject is saturated and isolated. Raise my subject illumination up. I'm exposing for my subject illumination. I'm dropping my ambient to whatever level I want. I could either destroy everything in the background, or I could just give it enough hint that people know what's there, but they know what I'm emphasizing. When you're a slave to lighting, you know, you're a slave to lighting. You lower your exposure to destroy your ambient lighting, you've destroyed your subject illumination as well. I don't even leave the house without a speed light. I wish I could leave the house with a studio strobe, and you know, obviously that's incredibly impractical. We all know that, right? Right. Everything is about lighting. Until you take that into effect and start thinking about where does your specular, diffuse, and midtone fall, you know? Why does nobody talk about grids? You'll never hear anybody like over on Diaper Review or Photography Forum talking about grids and beauty dishes. The professionals, they don't talk about cameras and they talk about lighting. They think about lighting, they think about ratios, the where to make the light fall, and in what sort of control. Grids, octoboxes, softboxes, beauty dish, the quality of the light, the control of the light, the intensity of the light, the angle of the light. Everything is lighting. You have to start thinking that way. If you don't, then the best cameras, the best lenses of the world are just snapshots. They are. Stop being afraid of owning a studio strobe and a few speed lights. You don't go anywhere without a speed light. Anywhere. Your sensor requires saturation, and you require the definition of your subject. You know? Unless you're a landscape photographer and you're a slave to the light, these people have to get up in early morning, late. I don't even like that sort of photography. I do love landscape photography. I'm a bit too lazy for I don't like being a slave to the lighting of the lands. Like, well, you know, I came to this place like 5 days in a row and I hunted out the perfect lighting, the perfect sunrise, or the perfect sunset. To hell with that sort of photography. I appreciate people that actually have the balls to do that. But I don't want to do it, and I don't like it. I like complete control over the lighting. I want to know where things fall, and I want to have control over where things fall. It's lighting. It begins in your mind. You can translate what is in your mind to the shot. But you can't do that with camera and lens. You have to have your mind, then you have to have lighting. Then once you have light, you have control over that. I mean, you're being your own god in photography. Be your own god of photography. Take control of it. Take control of it. Stop being a slave to ambient illumination. Subject isolation is not getting a lens and shooting it at f1.4. Subject isolation is subject saturation and isolation through lighting. That is real subject isolation. Start thinking about lighting. It's absolutely paramount.
The stuff that nobody talks about on these stupid photography forums is the most important stuff. It's like if stupid people aren't talking about it, then it must be important. Because stupid people are, by definition, stupid, aren't they? And the stupid people on photography forums, they don't talk about lighting and the quality of lighting and where it falls, how to place it. This is a fact. It's undeniable. Anyway, if you like these videos, you can drop me a buck or two. Tell me to jump off a cliff because I live really simply and I kill myself answering questions and emails. And I'm busting my butt, quite honestly, and it's murdering me. So any little bit of help helps, since I'm not being sponsored by anybody, nor do I have any affiliate links, like everybody else who does have affiliate links. Thanks for watching, and bye.